Good morning. I'm Elizabeth Schramm, and I'm honored to lead the Holocaust Resource Center, HRC. Thank you for joining us today in honor of Yom HaShoah. This year's program would not have been possible without the dedicated leadership and support of Rob Goldberg, CEO of the Buffalo Jewish Federation, Brenda Feldstein, Director and Editor of this year's program, Wendy Weisbrot, Chair of the HRC and of today's commemoration, and Lauren Bloomberg, HRC's Program Specialist. In addition, we are grateful to the 6 families, clergy members, musicians, and community religious school students for their participation. Finally, I would like to thank Mayor Brown and County Executive Poland Kars for issuing and signing a joint proclamation declaring April 24th through May 1st in Buffalo and Erie County the days of remembrance of the victims of the Nazi Holocaust. We are here today to commemorate the lives of the 6 million Jews who were systematically murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators between 1933 and 1945. 6 million individuals who had families, goals, and dreams for the future. Entire communities and towns wiped out simply because they were Jewish. There's truly nothing anyone can say nor do to make up for this loss. Though we can remember the 6 million who perished and honor those who survived this horrific period in history. We are extremely fortunate to have survivors living in Buffalo and are grateful that many of them have been interviewed and share their stories with our greater Western New York community. They have achieved the ultimate revenge against the Nazis by surviving, by being proud of being Jewish, and by having Jewish descendants. So, the theme of this year's commemoration is "We Are Here." These words are part of the Partisan song written in 1943 by Hirsch Glick while he was living in the Vilna ghetto. It is a song that was sung by Jewish partisan fighters that symbolize resistance, courage, and hope for the future. Despite the anti-Semitism that preceded the Holocaust, that was the foundation of the Holocaust, and that still exists today, we are here. It's something to celebrate and also something to not take for granted. While we must remember the horrors of the past We have the responsibility today to learn from humanity's mistakes and fight anti-Semitism and other forms of hatred to create a better future for generations to come. I would now like to invite Rabbi Ori Bergman to give the invocation.
On February 8th, 2021, Shoshana Ovitz passed away at the age of 105. You might have never heard her name, but her story is remarkable as a testimony to the words of Hirsch Glick, Mir seinen do, anachnu po, we are here. Shoshana Ovitz survived Auschwitz, where she saw her mother handed over to Nazi doctor Joseph Mengele. After liberation, Shoshana married and eventually made her way to Israel to build a family. Fast forward 72 years from liberation, and Shoshana Ovitz is celebrating her 104th birthday, and her birthday wish? To gather all her descendants at the Western Wall, all 400 plus of them. It was an incredible scene and a testimony that Am Yisrael Chai, the nation of Israel lives. We are here. The Talmud declares, Jacob, Yaakov, the patriarch of the entire Jewish people, did not die. Can this be? You can visit Jacob's resting place in the holy city of Hebron by the cave of the patriarchs and matriarchs. So I am reminded of the teaching of Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik. He notes that when we share Jewish ideas of sages gone by, we don't say, for instance, Rabbi Akiva said in the past. We say, Rabbi Akiva says, right now, in the present. When I sit to learn Torah, says Rabbi Soloveitchik, I immediately find myself in the fellowship of the sages of tradition. The relationship is personal. Maimonides is at my right. Rashi sits at the head and explicates the text. They're all in my small room, sitting around my table. Jacob, our patriarch, did not die because of you, because of us. Because mir seinen do, anachnu po, we are here. We are a link in the chain of our tradition, writing our chapter. And when we hold the memory of those that have come before us, we become witnesses to the words of the prophet Samuel, Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker, the eternity of Israel does not lie. And as we do so, we can join in the song of the partisans. Although the skies filled with lead cover blue days, our promised hour will soon come. Our marching steps ring out. We are here.
Thank you, Rabbi Bergman, for your inspiring invocation, so eloquently teaching us about the Jewish significance of linking generations and the responsibility we have to make the past our present and take that forward. The centerpiece of our commemoration revolves around the lighting of 6 memorial candles. 6 candles representing the 6 million Jewish lives lost during the Holocaust, many of whom don't have someone to light a candle or say Kaddish for them. So collectively, we have taken on this responsibility. These memorial candles will be lit by 6 precious Holocaust survivor couples or individuals from our community that range in age from 81 to 103. With their beautiful families surrounding them, each family shares the remarkable story of resistance, resilience, and hope for the future, standing together, linking generations to signify we are here. Wir seinen do.
The judge comes in, pounds with his thing, and says, "Congratulations, gentlemen, you will now become a citizen of the United States." I almost fell from my seat. I couldn't believe this. I was nobody. Hitler said I wasn't a human being, and I'm a citizen of the United States. That's the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life, except when I met Ursula. That was even greater. when I was 6 years old enough to go to school, I was sent to the usual public school. And I don't know whether I was the only Jewish kid there or more than one. There were no problem. The teacher was not Jewish. She wrote the most beautiful essay. She said, Gerhard is a very intelligent boy. He's doing very well. He works awfully hard, and I expect great abilities from him and all that sort of thing. But when I was 8 years old, he was appointed. My parents got a letter which said he cannot come back to school because he's a Jew. So although my parents sent me to a Hebrew school where I learned next to nothing, well, then I didn't go back to school till I came here and I was 15. And that the vast majority of people did nothing to us, but there were some people in there who were beyond belief. They were so horrible. When you just think about that. My father made every effort to get us out of there. So one day, a miracle, it's unbelievable. His brother, my uncle, found an old letter that had been written by their grandmother, and she had married a man in New York who had the unusual name Wojtitz. So my father got a hold of an English teacher by the name of Levy, who helped him write a letter in English to every Wojtitz in New York. And by golly, a woman named Elsa Wojtitz Reichert sent us a letter, written in English of course, which said, we will help you. We couldn't believe it, but she did. We landed in Hoboken, New Jersey. We came here, we had absolutely nothing. I sort of worked around the clock. But so does every immigrant. That isn't different from anybody else. We were very poor. We were members of a Jewish synagogue of Germans only, and I had seen her there, but I didn't know her name. And I said, my name is Gerhard, and may I walk you home? And what's your name? And she said, yeah, you can walk me home. Well, the outcome is 3 children, 6 grandchildren, 9 great-grandchildren, and 32 books.
The parents had a shoe store. And before too long, they no longer had the shoe store because no Jews were allowed to have it. And my dad went through all kinds of things there, all kinds of things. And eventually, my dad came to America. I always worked.
Yeah.
When I was very young, I worked as if I were older. I pretended that I was old. And so I went to work, and I worked at night and went to school.
You never give up. Never.
You never give up.
We were so poor, we had nothing, and I said, I'll be damned if I'll be poor the rest of my life. No matter what happened, we had jobs and we lost the jobs. People kicked us out. People said, you don't know English, get out of here. I don't care, no matter what happened, I got another job, I didn't care. This is a land of opportunity. People don't give things to you, but they give you an opportunity. And if you're willing to grab it, boy, look at this.
The one thing that my folks' experience teaches me, in my estimation, we're very, very lucky to have been born in the United States, and we have nothing to complain about ever. That's pretty much the sum and essence of it, I'd say.
Keep on going, keep working, and be grateful for what you have. And we also learn the benefit of tradition. So I light the Shabbat candles. I see my grandmother's hands. We sent our kids to Jewish day school because it's important for them to have education. Even though we had to drive used cars, we sent our kids to day school. And I would do it all again.
And what I've learned is that I look to Israel for the model of what the Jewish people, can be, and that's, self-reliant, willing to defend oneself. You don't feel sorry for yourself, looking forward to the future and not so much at the past. You remember your past, but you also learn that you have to. Let's see, what is it? Was it Rabbi Hillel that said, "If I am not for myself, who will be for me?"
There's a pool in the backyard at this house that my grandparents put in the 60s. And the money for that pool came from the German government. And I especially like to have gone with my kids. It's where we've all learned how to swim. And I was asking my grandfather about the pool and why they put it in, when they put it in. And he told me that every time he swims in that pool, he put that pool in so that he could enjoy it with his family, his kids and his grandkids. And he was able to take something horrible and that money that they got from the German government from something awful, and to be able to enjoy that and turn that into something so positive and a place for family to gather out of a tragedy it makes the pool just like an even better place to be.
One of the lessons that I took from that, and from my grandparents talking about their stories my entire life, is the importance of being connected to Judaism and making sure that we raise our kids Jewish so that way they raise their kids Jewish, and so on. And part of the way of doing that is by talking about the lessons of the Holocaust and talking about our stories and going to synagogue on Shabbat and celebrating all the holidays together.
It's very hard to move forward in a positive way if you don't appreciate and feel rooted and understand your past. And even if that means a lot of darkness and a lot of tragedy, as Gabby was saying, there can be good things and happy times that come out. But to really have those happy times, you still have to stay connected to where you come from, even if that means being sad sometimes.
My parents taught me light the candles on Shabbat and do the Kiddush and have Shabbat with my whole family. And I also like to dance with them, watch TV with them, give them hugs and kisses.
Before he was murdered by the Nazis on the streets of the Krakow ghetto, Mordechai Gebertig, who was a Yiddishist and a composer, composed this song, Es Brennt. It's about his shtetl and all the shtetls around Europe that were aflame. But more than that, he spoke of those bystanders around him who did nothing. They stood with their arms crossed. They just watched in silence as the towns were aflame. Es brennt. Es brennt, Brüderlech, es brennt. Oi, unser arm Städtel nebech brennt. Beise Winden mit ihr Gossen, reißen, brechen und zu blosen, und die Beise Winden hutschen. Als Rumscheune brennt, und ihr steht und guckt da so zu, mit verlegter Hand, und ihr steht und guckt da so zu, unser Städtels brennt. It's burning, brethren, it's a flame. Our little poor beloved Städtels aflame. Brutal winds in fury growing, keep on tearing, breaking, blowing, while the furious winds are wailing. Everything's aflame, and with folded arms you watch it, as if you were lame. And with folded arms you watch it, and our town's aflame. Es brennt, brüderlich, es brennt. Es kann Chalila kommen der Moment, wenn's ganze Städte mit uns zusammen soll weg in Asch und Flammen bleiben Wellen wie noch a Schlacht. Schwarz und Pust erwähnt, und steht und guckt da so zu, mit verlegter Hand. Und steht und guckt so zu, unser Städtels brennt. Es brennt, es brennt.
I was born in 1924, and I was born in Munich, Germany, and I grew up there until we left for the United States. My parents and my brother and I came over here in March of 1939. I grew up and I went to school there, and that was until Kristallnacht. And after that, there was no schooling anymore at all. What happened that night was, of course, all over the Jewish men who were 17 were subject to being arrested and sent to concentration camps. Our family, as usual, was very lucky. My older brother happened to be in the hospital with appendicitis. And the story we got later was that the surgeon was arrested right after the operation. My dad was taken into hiding by a non-Jewish friend who was taking chances for both himself and his family. My mother and I didn't go home because we didn't want to be in a position where we could be asked whether we knew where my dad was. Now, later in the week, there was an announcement that anybody that was captured, had been in hiding, was subject to being executed. So my dad decided he had to give himself up. And on Friday, he went to the Gestapo headquarters to give himself up. And like many people in that position, he didn't like to work on Friday afternoon. So he told my dad to go home and come back on Monday. And when he came back on Monday, they didn't want him anymore. We were full of luck. Everybody at that time had finally decided that the only way to survive was to get out. A friend of my dad's was coming to New York on business, And he went to a rabbi there and told him he knew this family in Munich that was trying to get out. And did he know anybody that could possibly help? Well, he knew somebody, and this man sent the appropriate papers. He didn't know us, he had never met us. The next step was when you were ready to pack up, somebody from the Gestapo would be there with a list to make sure that you didn't put anything away that you wasn't on the list. One of the things my dad had that was not on the list was this little steel box. My dad had in there mainly papers from his army service during the war. And all the detail, including that he was wounded and things like that. And this man said, "Are they doing things like this to people like you?" And my dad said, "Yes." And that's when the man totally changed. It helped because the man after that said, "I'm going to lunch," and we could have packed anything at that point. My passport, leaving from Germany, and a couple of interesting parts in that. The passport was marked with a nice red J. And this passport, since we, of course, were not even citizens anymore, the passport was issued for 1 year for the purpose of leaving Germany and specifically not for returning. So now we knew a family in Buffalo, so we came to Buffalo. When I graduated from high school, I went to college, ended up in the Army late, and eventually was stationed at Fort Dix, New Jersey. I went to graduate school, and as I tell people, after 4 years, I left with my PhD degree and my wife. Oh, I had 6 kids, 12 grandchildren, and so far 5 great-grandchildren. When my grandmother, after the war, came over here after surviving Theresienstadt, when she died, I found out that she had written a document about her life in the camp, and I translated it, and I've often used it in my talks.
The whole idea of what happened to people in the Holocaust, as opposed to just the sort of massive numbers of things that happened far away to people nobody's ever heard of, it suddenly became an individual and that individual's relatives and friends and what happened to them. And Dad annotated the letter to say what they found out after the war about what happened to a lot of the people she mentioned, which again just carries that truth on in a very concrete way.
My dad tells a story about after they were established in the United States that he and his brother went back to visit the gentleman who actually sponsored them to get out and thanked him for what he had done. But the message that that gentleman gave to my dad and his brother was, when they asked him what they could do to repay him, was to, treat other people like he treated them, to take care of, be involved in the community and to go out and reach. And that's meant a huge amount to me. And it's been the way my dad has lived his entire life. And for that, it's really grounded the family on a very strong foundation.
One of the things I've learned from my father is to do everything to your best of ability and as well as you possibly can. and it will come back and reward you for it.
The only way to keep bad things from happening again and being repeated is to understand what happened. So that when we recognize the early signs of something going awry, we can address it.
He also taught us to look out for people who couldn't stand up for themselves and to try to protect those who needed our help, to be politically aware and politically active when we needed to be, so that unfairness like the Holocaust would not happen again.
What I've learned from my grandfather is that no matter what life throws at you, if you have the presence of mind to move past it, to better yourself, and to be good to those around you, then there's nothing that you can't get past.
I'm thrilled that my daughter has been able to meet Grandpa a number of times, and I hope that, that will continue for a very long time. I'm happy to continue the family and raise kids who are Jewish and understand the history of the Jewish people.
I have huge respect for my father and his family for how they succeeded and thrived and created a family under what was very difficult circumstances when they arrived. Raising Jewish children was particularly important to me because of the sacrifices that others have made for us to still be here.
With everything that our grandpa went through in his life, and I just think it's so amazing and just wonderful that he has this great sense of humor.
I think too, one thing that sticks out in my mind about Grandpa is that he's always been a reminder in the back of my head to say something if you're witnessing an injustice or a wrongdoing. He's always kind of been that voice in the back of my head to speak up.
We've definitely learned a lot of perseverance and resilience from our grandfather, and because of the example he set for our parents and our parents have set for us, and it really just passes from generation to generation. And I hope for Amaya to be a strong, resilient, kind person who does what is right and stands up for others.
I hope everyone takes these reflections and learns something from them. I hope we don't lose the lens my grandfather has kept for us for so very long.
We stuck around. We're still here. We're still living and thriving, and that was something that I almost felt like I needed to sort of stand my ground and stare down the world and say, hey, we're not going anywhere. We're still here. You didn't win.
Sometimes the simple presence is enough to show that we truly are here, and just doing something, being together is enough to carry on, I guess.
I've always admired his understated sense of humor. He was really, I think, my inspiration to go into science as a career. We are here. Yeah, over here. You say it?
We are here.
No.
Yad Vashem, 2017. Did you turn back when the traffic tightened, when the path grew steep? Did you turn back when the road became uneven, when it bent in all directions? Did you turn back when darkness fell, when the shadows lengthened? Did you turn back when the city turned to ice, when the animals descended into their holes? Did you turn back, even for a moment, to notice me, your companion, your brother. I was the one, out of breath at your heels, who struggled on that same path you navigated so easily, who tried to no avail to get your attention, coughing and wheezing, bent over in exhaustion. Ah, but I was also the one who noticed the part you missed, your lost possession. I was the one who could have prevented the pain that will seep in long after you've left this place. It was I who might have lightened your burdens, if only you'd have noticed, if only you'd been able to turn back to see.
I am Mark Solarz, and I am a Holocaust survivor. I was born in a small little shtetl, 50 kilometers from Krakow. I was raised religious upbringing. I was the youngest of 7 kids. My family had a store of cloth on the meter, and my father used to go once a week to Krakow with the horse and buggy. After they liquidated the town, we were hidden by a Christian family, friends of my mother. After we had to leave the family, we went to the ghetto. My mother with my older brother, Alter, when they liquidated the town, they went with the liquidation. What I found out, they eventually shot him someplace in a forest past Miechov. From the ghetto, we went to work on the railroad. I and 3 sisters and my brother, we always see each other every day. I got a married sister, but she had 3 little kids. She was in the little camp. They didn't work, not productive. Eventually they liquidated and they shot all the kids. I was very scared. People, what they died, they put them right near the toilet. People stripped the clothes. You know, we didn't get too many showers. We all had lice. Also, in Prashov, I had typhus, you know, one of the first one. And when we finished the railroad, they liquidated the camp. We went through a selection to the right, to the left. The same night, they marched us to the railroad, and we went to Skarżysko-Kamienne, to an ammunition plant. Because of the Russian was already in Warsaw. They liquidated the camp, and they sent us to Częstochow. In Częstochow, we went to work in a steel plant. After a few months, the Russians come almost to Częstochow. They liquidated the camp, they marched us to the railroad, and they shipped us to Buchenwald. And I went to a kinderblock, the mostly minors. They give you once a day like a few potatoes in the skin, a little bit soup, and a slice of bread. That's only once a day. We got liberated in April the 11th, 1945, by the American Army. To describe, you always were undernourished, you know? According to the papers what I got, I only was weighing 75 pounds. That's my family would survive the camps. My brother and my sister married an Israeli, you know, and she had a baby. I went to Israel because I found a sister, and they sent me to a kibbutz. They call it Aliyat HaNoah. In the Liberation War, I only was 17 years old, and I belonged to a mountain brigade. We used to go out fighting every night. My wife, I met her in Israel before I came to America. I have 5 grandkids, 4 boys and 1 girl. My daughter has 2 boys, and my son has 2 boys and a girl. America is the best country in the world. I made money, I educated my kids, I lived in a nice home, and I retired to a nice place, and I got a nice friend too. I think right now comes to the mind how I survived all the atrocity, and I was lucky. One thing about it, I cannot live my life with the past. Cannot think everything would happen. I survived, and I did try to take care of myself and think for the future.
He tells me now how well he sleeps, you know, how good he feels. And I think that, you know, he doesn't let the past bother him. Or if there's something that comes up in the course of his day, he tries not to take it home with him, so to speak, or take it to bed, you know, so that at the end of the day, he figures out a way to relax and to have a good night's rest. So if I have to think about myself and all the stress and challenge in my life, I try not to worry about it at the end of the day, and I try not to take it to bed with me, so to speak. My dad has taught me a lot in my life, and he's been a great example for me my entire life. And I have tremendous respect for my father, and I love him very much.
Mark has left us with the attitude of how to keep things in perspective. And whenever he speaks of things, whether they be good or bad, he ends with, "What can you do?" And in our household now, little problems, we keep them in perspective and remind ourselves of Mark by ending everything with, "Hey, what can you do?" with his accent, his heavy Israeli accent.
He'll always call once a week, and he'll always talk to me for about 10 minutes, asking what I've been doing and how I'm doing and all the stuff that he wants to know. And I love him. He's the best grandpa I could have asked for. He's really nice. I love him.
And he's strong, right? Grandpa's really strong.
Yeah, he's really strong.
I love my grandfather very much. I looked up to him my entire life, and it's very, he's he's the strongest, most resilient person I know and I will ever know. He's been through so much and honestly accomplished so much, making a beautiful family in the United States and having so much descendants from him. He really did an honor for himself, his family back in Poland, and for honestly Jews everywhere. And that goes for any Holocaust survivor.
I'm studying history, and I think my passion for historical literacy was born out of every single time I would visit my grandpa when I was young. I would ask him to tell me his story. And I know his story like the back of my hand because he's told it to me so many times. And going back to what Aaron was talking about, because our family has a very intimate understanding of oppression, we are allied with all groups around the world that are facing oppression. I orient my life around actively fighting for liberation and justice for all people. And I do not want to be complacent in the oppression of any other people.
I never felt a doubt from him that he was going to get through it. It was always, this was my childhood, this was my life. And then I moved on, and then I did other things. And I know that's putting it simply, but I think that would be the resilient part of the message.
Sag nicht immer, dass du gehst den letzten Weg. Wenn Himmeln bleine, verstellen bräuche dich. Verkommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Es wird abbeut und unser Traum mir seinen Dom. Verkommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Es wird abbeut und unser Traum mir seinen Dom. Von grünem Palmen bis weißem Land von Schnee. Mir seinen Dom, mir unser Pein wild unterweht. Und wohlgefallen sitzt das Spritz vor unser Blut. Wird das sprotzt und unser Gewurr unser Mut. Und wohlgefallen sitzt das Spritz vor unser Blut. Wird das sprotzt und unser Gewurr unser Mut. You must not say that you walk the final way, because the darkened heavens hide the blue of day. The time we've longed for will at last draw near, and our steps as drums will sound that we are here. The time we've longed for will at last draw near, and our steps as drums will sound that we are here. From land all green with palms to lands all white with snow, we arrive with all our pain and all our woe, where our blood spread out and came to touch the land. There our courage and our faith will rise and stand. Our blood sprayed out and came to touch the land. There our courage and our faith will rise.
I was born in Germany, in a small town. This is my second pandemic. The first one was the Spanish flu when I was born in 1918. Well, I was born when one sister was 16 years old and the other one was 14 years old. So there was a surprise. There was always a tremendous amount of anti-Semitism in Germany, and I even felt it as a child. And of course it got so much worse after Hitler came to power. I was in Düsseldorf, near where I lived, about an hour away from where I lived, and there was a knock at the door, and two people, not in uniform, and they arrested the host, and the way they shouted at him and the way they shouted at me, I thought they were going to kill us. And in the meantime, outside, a whole group of people had gathered, and people came inside, and everything they could get a hold of was thrown into the street. And I went down to see whether anything could be rescued, could be saved. A girl picked up a scarf and told me, you can hang yourself with it. And after all those years, I still remember that. I found out that nothing had happened to my parents, and we lost the house. I remember my mother only crying as I took the piano. That's always been in my memory. We had moved from our house to a neighboring city where we were not known, so that actually saved us.
The other thing is before Kristallnacht, she had some idea that she had to get out of Germany. So when she was 18, she went for 6 months to Holland to learn how to work on a farm so that she could go and emigrate to Palestine. And that's where she met who became her fiance, Heinz Markowski. And then she came back after the 6 months. Her mother forbade her to go to Palestine. She was able to emigrate and get out to England. He waited for her in Berlin, and he died waiting for her.
First of all, I went as a maid, which was not too pleasant. But then the bombings every night, that was another thing. My parents stayed home. My dad was a German through and through. He was very patriotic, if you might call it that. And he would not move. And my mother had a brother here in this country. We wouldn't have any trouble to move here. He came there as a young man. They were killed at the concentration camp. And I applied maybe 10 days, 1 week later, and I came to this country 10 years later. This is my sister Lucy, and she came to Buffalo, and that's how I landed up in Buffalo. I came to visit her 10 years later. No, this is my sister who died in the concentration camp. The first, when I came to this country, the first person I met was my future husband. But I got married a few months later. We took some wonderful trips. We've been to every continent, both of us. It was a wonderful life. It really was. I mean, I had a nice family, I had my husband and 2 kids. Ever would think of this? 6 million. We would do better to focus on our similarities rather than our differences.
My mother really never spoke about it much when I was young, but my grandmother basically told the story. And it caused me, I really got an intense interest in history from it. And I think it culminated when in 2014 I went to Berlin. I went with my daughter. We went to 3 cities, but Berlin was what I really wanted to go to. And to see the Germans and to see how they spoke about it and to go to the Holocaust Museum and the memorial. And I went with my daughter. And we'd been touring a couple of capitals. That was our 3rd city. And we looked at the register and we found my grandparents and my aunt's name. And I showed my daughter and she looked at it and I could just see it grab her suddenly when she saw submitted by Ruth Lansing. That was her grandmother. She was on the other side of the world basically, and it really struck home. And so even though again, my mother never really spoke that much about it with my children, this was a way of passing it on to her.
The Stolpersteine are the Germans' way of making sure that their former citizens, the German Jews that were murdered in the Holocaust, are remembered and honored in front of the homes where they used to live. In Hamburg, on Kristallnacht, the whole city lights up all the Stolpersteine that are on the pavement. If we're going to have people who are different, and we're all different in some way, if we are going to have them get along, we need to know each other personally. I want to get it beyond the Jewish community and out to other people to know what happened. And it's very real because the people I've sent it to know me, and this is my mother. So it becomes personal.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God
My name is Marty Lewin, and this is my wife, Beth, and we're both Holocaust survivors. We came to America in 1938, and the day that we passed the Statue of Liberty, I saw my mother cry for the very first time. A narrow escape because the Nazis were after us. I remember my days in Germany. At first, my early days were good days, but it got very difficult after a while. We could hardly leave the house. We couldn't go to public schools. And so the community, the Jewish community, established a parochial school that I went to. And then that became bombarded by kids from other schools who laid in waiting for us as we got out of school. So I took my share of beatings. The first group of people that the Nazis went after were lawyers. And doctors were soon to follow. My father's practice got smaller and smaller because the non-Jews could no longer come to him. The threat became so apparent that we really had to seek refuge somewhere. And fortunately, an American friend was able to give us an affidavit to come, and we came and were able to settle in New York. My dad was a doctor, and he was able to pass his medical boards very rapidly and establish a medical practice in New York, and was very successful. And then I went on to Syracuse University, but after I had served a stint in the United States Navy. I decided on a career in the field of library science. And in Buffalo, there was a Grosvenor Library, a reference library of great distinction. And then I became a part of the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library System. Both were librarians, and Beth and I decided to settle in Buffalo. We decided to have children, 2 girls. This is my dad and my mother and at our weddings. We had a, very lively relationship with a lot of people. I think in my case, I'm basically an optimist, and I see the good in people more than the other aspect. We have to remember and make sure that people remember the dangers of what can happen if you're not watchful of our freedoms and defend our freedoms. And when you hear wrong being done, not to just stand by, but to actually take steps to make sure that the world knows it, the community knows it, and that the person is dealt with appropriately. They were rounded up. The family, she and her brother, who was 7 years older than she, and they decided to get on the children's transport. They were able to get onto it. And so they were put on a train by their parents, and they told them that we'll see you in a few weeks, we'll join you later. And of course, that never happened. So here's this little 7-year-old taken with her brother by train to Holland, and from there by ferry to Great Britain. And an arrangement had been made for a British family that wanted to adopt her. That family, however, had a daughter of Ruth's of her age, and they thought this would be a companion for the daughter. However, up to that point, the daughter had been the princess of that household. And here comes this little girl who doesn't speak any English and who's competing with her. And so she made life kind of miserable for Beth. And after a while, Beth had an uncle in London, and she pleaded with him to get her out of the situation. He had no children. He was married, but his wife was ailing, and they agreed to shelter both her and her brother. And she got her education in London during the Blitz. But she had another uncle in America, and he felt that she would have a better future in this country. And so she moved from New York to Gowanda. We were so grateful and thankful for the vision that my mom and my dad had, and that America welcomed us. And that truly turned out to be a land of plenty.
It did shape me because I learned more about the Holocaust at an earlier age than any of my peers. And I became very sensitive to any kind of racism or injustice. Couldn't stand it. They taught me empathy in a lot of ways, and to have a good sense of humor and a bright outlook. My mother lost her parents, I lost my grandparents. My father lost his grandmother. That was my great-grandmother that they sent to a camp. And it's personal, even though I wasn't there. It happened to me too, in a lot of ways.
Our sages teach that to save a life is to save an entire world, while destroying a life is to destroy an entire world. When we say Kaddish for them, we add to the hope that our worlds will be the kind of worlds that we wish they could have built for their descendants. We build our worlds honoring their memory. When we say Kaddish in their memory, we ensure that our worlds will never forget their worlds. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemeh rabbah, be'alma divra kiruteh v'amlich malchuteh, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmeh rabbah mivarach le'alam u'lamei almaya. Yibarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmeh dekudsha brichu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata. Da'amiradn bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabbah min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimramav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen.
My name is Shershnevsky, and I'm Holocaust survivor.
My name is Raisa Shershnevsky, and I am Holocaust survivor.
I was born in Lithuania, capital of Lithuania, Vilnius, less than a year after independent Lithuania was occupied by Soviet Union and forced to become one of its republics. Just less than 3 months later, my city was occupied by German army, and 2 months later, all the Jews were requested to move to ghetto. I was at that time 5 months old. So my parents were looking for a chance to smuggle me out of ghetto to save my life. They found out about Polish lady, deeply religious Catholic lady. Her name is Miss Alexandra Zhevetsky, who had heart of gold, agreed to take Jewish child smuggled out of ghetto. My parents put me into that bucket. I was 7 months old, covered me with rugs, and my mother carried that bucket out of ghetto with column of Jews going to work. And Miss Alexandra picked up that bucket, and I ended up in her apartment. She was risking her life. I was discovered as Jewish child in her apartment. Everyone who was living there would be executed right away. She registered me as Stanislav Marvin, last name Kostko. So regardless who will win war, she will have piece of paper that I am legally resigning a name, legal name, and so on and so on. How she managed to feed me, how she managed to dress me, I don't know. Every so often, oldest girl living with her took me along the walls of ghetto, so my parents through the windows could see that I am alive. In middle of 1943, when those rumors spread that ghetto will be liquidated, underground Jewish fighters tried to get out of ghetto through sewers, through underground tunnels, and so on. One of such group was led by my parents, my father and my mother. My father survived. My mother unfortunately perished. I continued living with Miss Alexandra Zhevetsky until 44, and my father came back, and eventually he managed to take me to him. Even today, I have difficulties calling her Miss Alexandra Zhevetsky. I call her Mateńka, which is mommy in Polish.
I was born in 1940 in Ukraine, near Kiev, near the capital of Kiev. When the Germans were coming, our family were evacuated, and we moved to south of Russia, and we stayed in Uzbekistan. Somehow we got there maybe in 6 or more months, and it was my sister, my 2 brothers, my mother, and her old father, my grandpa. We didn't have a place to stay. We stayed in my aunt's backyard because she didn't have a place for us. It was a big family.
It was five people, and we didn't have anything to eat. And I remember when I was a little, maybe a year, 2 years or 3 years old, people were eating and putting their garbage from food in this row. And I was walking, looking for something to get, like a piece of watermelon, or a piece of apple, or a piece of bread, something. I didn't look good because it was malnutrition. I was with a big stomach and very skinny. And my one brother, he died because of the malnutrition. And the other two, my brother and sister, they survived because they were older. They were 12 and 14. And after the war was over, we came home to our city. My mother provided foods for us, and that's it. No clothes, one clothes for 10 years. I graduated from high school, and we moved to Lithuania. My family moved to Lithuania, and I met him. We were married. We got our daughter, and we were making living like all others. We were happy because we had the family.
And we realized that there was no future for her in the Soviet Union. We're glad that we left Soviet Union. Our daughter would never, ever succeed as much as she succeeded here.
I'm absolutely grateful for my grandmother, and that I never knew, but for some reason she was always in my heart. So I felt like I grew up with her because of my dad, because of the stories. I always felt that she was also part of our life, and that I was following her footsteps. Somehow she wanted to be a doctor, and I achieved her dream and my dream.
Because his mother sacrificed her love for him, now we have another Rose.
And Ben, and Ryan, and Jason.
And the whole generation, younger generation, is because one woman sacrificed, the other woman saved another life.
You know, just really just remembering how much they were invested in my, future, my education, my wellness. That theme of hard work will amount to success in life could be directly attributed to my grandfather and my grandmother.
Starting that way and having successful life and being prosperous, and having a daughter who was a medical doctor, and a grandson who's a medical doctor, and another grandson going to law school, and another one who has a business, a technology company. I think it shows the success and the pride, I believe, that they had and what they've accomplished, and just their survival that they've had.
They were always there for us, whether it was food, whether it was showing up for our games. Whatever part of our life, they were there, and they invested that because we were that joy for them, and it really shows. They went through so much to get to America and be in this position that the little things were what mattered.
I guess when I was growing up, both my grandparents, they were my #1 fans. Even when my parents couldn't make it to a sports match, I always knew my grandparents were there. A lot of our success is due to being accepted and pushing through and breaking boundaries.
Over 26,000 righteous among nations refuse to be bystanders. So don't be bystander. Fight any kind of hate. Doesn't matter it's anti-Semitic or anti-Christian, anti-Muslim, doesn't matter. Fight any kind of hate. And never hate anyone.
We are here.
El male rachamim, shochen bamromim, hametzei menucha nechona, betzel kanefe ashchina. במעלות קדושים וטהרים כזוהר הרקיע, כזוהר הרקיע ומזהירים את נשמות אחינו ואחיותינו שנהרגו ושנשחטו ושנשרפו חיים על קידוש השם בעבור שכולנו כל בני ישראל מתייחדים עם זכרם הקדוש ומתפללים בעד עליית נשמותיהם בגן עדן תהא מנוחתם. לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים. יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים. ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. ארץ אל תכסי דמם, וינוחו ושלום על משכבם, ונאמר אמן.
Wherever we stand today, we stand together as we bear witness to the stories of ancestors, family, friends, and community members. When the Israelites are poised to enter the Promised Land, Moses addresses them, Atem nitzavim hayom, you stand together today. Everyone, your leaders and your elders, men, women, and children, the strangers within your camp, people of all walks of life, and those who will be with us in the future. As they gathered and they listened, and they thought, and they acted, so too do we say that we are here today to listen, to think, to feel, and to act. We are here, and we are all needed if we are going to prevent the atrocities of the Holocaust from resurfacing for the Jewish people. We are here, and we are needed to fight against the evil acts that are committed in places around the world, horrors that we have declared should never happen again to anyone. The Israelites, with all of their differences, came together when it mattered the most. We have to do the same today, no matter our differences. There is nothing more important than this. Adonai oz le'amo yitain. May God bless us with courage and strength. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. May God grant us a true and lasting peace.
Wir seinen da. We are here. We are here.
We are here.
We are here.
We are here.
We are here.
We are here.
We are here.
We are here.
We are here. We are here. We are here.
We are here.
We are